We're looking at the book of Jonah, and today I want to briefly look at Jonah chapter 1. Jonah was commissioned by God, called by God to go to Nineveh, which was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, what we now know in the area of Syria. Nineveh was a wicked place, a cruel place, and very nasty things happened there. And Jonah's reaction upon hearing of his call to Nineveh was to run in the opposite direction. So he ran to the nearest seaport of Joppa and got on a boat to Tarshish, which is heading for Spain. And most of us know the story of what happened. The seas roared and the ship was floundering in the heavy seas, and the sailors were frightened. And they questioned Jonah, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And they told him that he was a Hebrew who worshipped God, the God of heaven and of all creation. And so they asked him to pray to their God that the sea would calm. But it did not abate. And in the end, they drew lots. And as the Bible tells us in a very nice way, the lot fell on Jonah. And so he volunteered to be cast over the side of the ship. And then he said, "If you do that, because this is all my fault, I have run from God, then the sea will calm." And so the sailors reluctantly threw him overboard and the sea calmed. And the interesting thing is there we read that the sailors then did fear God. They made sacrifices to him and made vows to him. They obviously realized that God was at work through Jonah. And Jonah, as we know, finished up in the belly of a large fish for 3 days and 3 nights. So what does this story tell us? Well, very briefly, it tells us a number of things. First of all, that God speaks through strangers. Those sailors had no fear of God until this storm came up. And then Jonah was able to give a brief testimony when asked, "Who are you?" What a wonderful example of someone. But also don't underestimate God's power in any situation. He was able to calm the sea and the waves when Jonah went overboard. And the third thing you can bring out from this first chapter of Jonah is that you cannot run or hide from God. Even though Jonah ran in the opposite direction, God caught up with him, but still used him. And finally, the fourth thing worth bearing in mind in this situation is that nothing is beyond God's power. Nothing can stop you being rescued, however bad and difficult your past has been. No situation cannot be rescued by God's love. So read that chapter. It's an interesting chapter, but it tells us quite a lot about God's love for us. And I close with this prayer. Eternal God and Father, you create us by your power and redeem us by your love. Guide and strengthen us by your Spirit, that we may give ourselves in love and service to one another and to you. Amen.